which is entirely possible with the storm outside. So we'll see how this.
Exactly. So hi, ladies. It's so fantastic to be here. I'm so excited to be hanging out with the modern Prairie ladies. They are, as you can tell, awesome. And they're building such an exciting community. And, you know, without them, I wouldn't be able to necessarily reach all of you. I mean, I teach a lot locally. I mean, people might come, I live west of Toronto in Canada, and I might get people as far as Toronto and a little further afield. But really, the beauty of what we're doing here is that we can, you know, whether you're in the valleys or the hills, west, east, south, north, you can be here. So this is fantastic. I'm really excited. So, you know, Melissa alluded to the fact that I sort of evolved into the whole felting world. And it's true. I mean, before I was about 47, I really had not, or maybe 45-ish, I had not even really seen felting, or maybe I had seen it and I just didn't recognize it. And when I saw what some other people were doing, I thought, oh, how adorable. I had no idea what the process was. I just knew that it was called felting. And so one Easter, I was getting my daughter a little gift from the store, and I was attracted to this felting kit. And I thought, oh, the Easter bunny should get my daughter this felting kit. I'm sure my daughter Lena would just love this kit. And so I got it for her. And of course, I started felting. She poked for a few minutes and I carried on. So in the beginning, I just found myself poking away, doing cute little characters like sculptural. And then I got introduced to two-dimensional felting, so making pictures with the needle. And then I got introduced to wet felting, which is another form of felting. And so from there, I just got totally excited. And, you know, fast forward some time later, I now have a studio where I live. And I'm going to take you on a little tour of the studio and show you where I've been thrilled to be for the last 2.5 years, making art, but also teaching art. So I'm going to do this, you know, really, you know, this is really going to be, let's see how this works. And if I don't drop my phone, this will be a miracle. So here we're walking towards the front of my studio, and I'm going to flip the old camera here for you. Sorry, guys, I just got to figure out how I'm going to do that. There we go. Here we are. Okay, so now when we walk into my studio, it's a pretty big space, and you're going to see some wool very shortly. So there's my first cubby of wool, and there's my next bookshelf of wool, and oh, surprise, more wool, and over here, and over here, and over there. And on the ground and in my pockets and in my purse. But this is my space, and there's some beautiful arched windows here, which lets in gorgeous light when I'm working on some of my pieces. Oh, I have to do a little speaking engagement today, so I have some of my art downstairs, but this is an example of wet felted and needle felted. This is my piece called Frida Kahlo as an ostrich. Yeah, I took Frida Kahlo, the artist, modeled a picture after how she did self-portraits and turned her into an ostrich. I'm sure she'd be so happy about that. There's a little needle felted picture. That's using the needle to make a picture. And let's see what else. Oh, this is, I've never been to Arizona, my friends, but I saw enough pictures and I decided there's a lot of bling in this too, sparkles, but you can't see that. That's wet felted and needle felted, because I like the cactus, you know. And this is a table runner I did over here. So I put a liner on the back, but this is sort of an ocean scene with the ships there. And then this is PEI. That's wet felted with some needle felting on top. This is just for fun. This is like a tree of life. So there's some stitching in here. You can do all kinds of things. You know, if you get into this art form, you can use all kinds of other media to mix with it, whether you're a sewer, embroiderer, beater, whatever. This is a piece I'm doing for in honor of a friend who passed away, unfortunately, 2.5 years ago. It's for her husband. I wanted to kind of channel a little bit of Monet in that piece. So there you are. And then upstairs, I have a loft, which is really great. And that's going to be sort of like a gallery area soon enough. So I'm very fortunate. So that's kind of a tour. Oh, I forgot. Let's go over to here, the table. A little quick, we are going to allude to this in a little bit, but very quickly, here are some little goodies I've been working on, which we are going to tell you all about soon. Those are fruits. And I'm not going to spend time right at this moment because we are going to get into that. But I want to flip it back to Melissa and see if that was a good tour and if she's happy with that, or if I need to show you more.
There, I thought that was perfect. And I don't know about you ladies, but this, I mean, I had no idea that to me, like felting just seemed like little Christmas tree ornaments. And I didn't even know you could felt like landscapes and artwork. And your work is so beautiful, Carolyn. And I'm so excited that you're going to be able to guide
you
to be anywhere to like near what you're able to do. It's such a thrill. And it's so different and really, really beautiful. So thank you for that tour. And ladies, if you're ever up, near Toronto, you'll have to go visit for sure.
So Carolyn,
hello, are you still there, Melissa?
I'm here.
Good. So now, would you guys like to learn a little bit about what felting is all about? That was a tour, but let me tell you a little bit about what's involved. So with, sorry, if there's ever any pauses, it might be because we're waiting for each other. There might be a little freeze, but we'll come back to you. So with felting, in essence, what you are doing through the process of felting is that you are making it such that the fibers of the wool can connect to one another. So I'm going to hold up a picture here to show you what a fiber of wool looks like underneath a microscope. And if you were to look at some other fibers from other animals, such as camel, alpaca, goat, I'm not sure about human hair, I think so, but basically there are scales along the shaft of the fiber. So I'm going to show you this up close. Are you seeing that? Is that showing? Melissa, can you see that?
Yes, Carolyn, actually pull it back and to your left. Pull it back to your left. There we go. That's perfect.
Can you see that?
That's perfect. Yes.
Okay, great. So you can see along the shaft of the wool fiber, there are scales, kind of like roof shingles. And what happens is when we're felting, we're breaking open the scales so they open up. And then when we're felting, whichever method we're using, we're encouraging those fibers to connect, to latch onto one another. So when you throw one of your prized sweaters into the washing machine and it comes out looking like a Barbie sweater, that's because it's been felted. It had the perfect storm of things going on. It had heat, moisture, agitation. That's wet felting. So what happens is the moisture and the soap open up the fibers, and then the agitation in the machine is what makes those fibers connect. With needle felting, what we're doing is we're doing something different. We're using a needle, as you could guess by the name. And I'm going to show you a picture of a needle up close as well, because to just show you a needle, you won't see the inner or the workings up close. So I'm going to hold this, and Nicole, tell me if that shows up.
It does. Are you wanting us to see the artwork, Carolyn, or the needle?
Nope, just more the needle down there.
Oh, okay. No, lift it up a little bit more. There we go. That's perfect.
Okay.
That's exactly.
So there's a needle. And with you notice up close, there are along the shaft of the needle, notches in the needle. Okay. So when you're kind of poking into the wool, what happens is, again, you're breaking open those scales. And then as you're poking, the agitating factor, you are connecting them together. So it's a totally different process. However, it's extremely effective. And I might add, very, very satisfying when you hear the needle going. It's very satisfying. I think most of you would like that sound. I do anyways. So this is the needle right here in my hand. And there's a little L shape at the top. I think the reason why is oftentimes people, when they felt, they might put that needle in a holder where there are multiple needles. So if they're doing a big project and they want to felt a lot, they may have 4 to 7 to 11 needles in there. And then so the little L at the top of the needle allows them to put it into the holder. But I also like it because when I'm holding the needle, I can kind of hang on to the needle that way. So basically the poking action is what allows us to do whatever we want with that wool. And am I allowed to talk about our little designs, Nicole and Melissa?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to make one suggestion to everybody who's watching. If you put your settings on speaker view, when Carolyn is talking, she's bigger on your screen, so you can see the detail of the needle and what she's doing. So
Gotcha.
definitely put it on speaker view so you can see her more readily. And yes, please talk about what we're planning. That would be fantastic.
Awesome. So for those of you, again, if you are changing your settings, I'm just going to hold that up closer. That's the needle. And if I hold it up to the light, I can just barely see those notches. And the thing about needles is you wouldn't believe it, but there's many types of needles where they're different gauges, meaning different thicknesses. They also have different designs of notches around the shaft. So depending on what kind of project you're working on, that may determine the kind of needle. When I'm doing 2-dimensional art, I like to work on with needles that are called 40 gauge, which is a very fine tipped needle. That refers to the diameter of the needle. And so as you actually go down in the number, I have to look it up why that happens. I forget. But for instance, a 36 gauge is more of a workhorse needle. So if I were doing something a little more sculptural, I can show you a couple things here. This is funny. This will kind of make you laugh, I hope. When I first started needle felting, I was just experimenting with making different things. And I had a girlfriend who was going through a divorce at the time. And I decided to make a doll because, I talked about poking with the needle, right? So when you're poking with a needle, what are you kind of doing, right? So I call it Hex the X. So this is, I won't say his name, but this is her ex. And I needle felted. I even put like a little leather cuff on his arm because he wore that little chain around his neck, little tattoo there. And so when she saw it, I was giving it to her and she said, well, I really can't take this home. It's a little bit creepy. So I kept it at my studio. But when I was using the needle, I used that 36 gauge because I was trying to take a pile of wool and condense it down quickly. And that's why. But when I'm trying to go for a little more fine detail, I'll use that 40 gauge needle. So the wonderful thing, ladies, about doing this is that it's a very accessible craft/art form. It really doesn't cost much to get into this at all. You just get yourself some needles, you get yourself a foam pad because you don't want to poke through onto your table, you don't want to poke through onto your lap, and you get pieces of what I call pre-felt, which is basically your canvas, a piece of 100% felt, plus you look for carded wool. Carded wool refers to, and I'll show you some wool in a moment, refers to the process of cleaning the sheep's wool, but moving it through these carding drums so that it comes out in sheets of wool that you can buy in bats, like rolls. And then you can use that for your needle felting. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go over to show you something very exciting. I've been chatting with these two beautiful ladies at Modern Prairie about our first, we're very excited, kit that we're going to have available to people who want to register for a class with me. And we decided to do some fruits. And so we chose to do 4 fruits. And I hope you can see this in my lighting here. We are going to do, and there's an apple as a choice. Can you see that? And there's a pear. I just framed these two just for the heck of it. It's hard to see the glint on the glass. And another one is a peach. And another one is a lovely lemon. So with those fruits, we are going to be developing a couple kits. Each kit will have the opportunity to do 2 of those fruits in them. Okay, so those will be available pretty soon for pre-order. And then what happens is you can order those, and then we will have a class coming up I think the working date we're moving towards is May 6th. So you may want to save the date on your calendar. And so the ladies will get that up on the website pretty soon. And if you really want to give this a go, take a poke at it, as I like to say, then you'll want to join in on that class. So is there any, I think at this point, it might be a nice natural moment to say, are there any questions? And maybe Nicole could pass them along to me before I show you guys some wool. Are there any questions about this so far?
Anybody?
No hands raised?
I have a question.
Sure.
Hi, my name's Linda. And
Linda.
I just started to write down some of the basic things that you start off with. So it's a foam pad for the bottom. So you
Foam
don't
pad,
put potato.
yes. And
And
I'll
then
show
the
you an
canvas.
example. Here's an example. These are little tiny, these are mini ones, but these are very thin,
I
but you
see.
can get them any density.
Okay.
You can get them any size, density, that kind of thing. And there are suppliers, right across US and Canada. Like I said, there will be a kit available with all that stuff included if you do want to participate in that class.
Okay. Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
And Linda, you also probably wrote down needles, needle felting, needles.
Yes.
And also, if you're doing the 2-dimensional thing that we're talking about with the fruits, then you'd want to get yourself some backing as well. So this is an example of what is called pre-felt, which is felted wool. And it becomes like your canvas that you can cut to any size you want, and then you can poke into that. So those are basically, and then the wool itself, which I can happily show you ladies now. I'd like to talk a little bit about wool types. There are many breeds of sheep that are going to give you wool that is wonderful for felting. One of the most common types is merino. That is used a lot in needle felting as well as wet felting, because it's so responsive to the needle and to wet felting. But there are other breeds of sheep as well. There's Corriedale, Romney, Bergschaft, and multitudinous others. I tend to work with Maori or merino the most. And then there's blends therein. And it really depends on what you're doing, because different kinds of wool will work differently for the application. So with the wool you'd be using in needle felting, a lot of felters really prefer to work with wools that are carded, meaning the fibers are all jumbled up in a bunch of different directions. And this would come in a sheet, but it's usually, when you buy it, it's usually rolled up into like a bat, like this. It's usually in a bat. That's usually how it comes. And the fibers are short and they're crimpy, and they respond beautifully to when you poke the needle into it. That's why people love to use this wool. There are many other kinds of wool that I use for wet felting that I use much more often than what I am showing you here. Because with the soap and the water and the desired effect I'm trying to go for, I like to go for something else called wool tops, which is another discussion. But there's so many colors you can get in, any color under the rainbow. And that's part of the attraction to this as well. Is so many people not only love the tactile nature, get your hands in there, but they get to see all the brilliant, beautiful, vibrant colors of the wool. And yes, sorry.
I think Nicole has a question.
Sure.
Actually, it's Christy Hammond who has a question. I'm going to, if that's okay, I'm gonna add her and then let her. If you can unmute yourself, Christy, that'd be great.
Okay.
Sorry, real quick, the pre-felt that you were talking about, that sheet, is that the same kind of squares we buy? Like I buy felt because I make little Christmas ornaments and stuff. Is that the same kind of felt?
When the pre-felt, you mean that sheet that I was showing you?
Right.
And you were saying, what do you?
So, when you just buy like the sheet of squares, like an 8x10 or 8x11, whatever it is in the craft store, you buy those little sheets. Is that the same kind?
Well, typically those are more synthetic, whereas this is 100% wool. Those work though. I mean, people do poke the wool into it. I find that it's really lovely though to go for the 100% wool. It just is so, I don't know. I feel that it slides in a little bit nicer. You just can test it out yourself, but I have definitely worked with those squares from the craft stores too. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Carolyn, we've got a couple more in the chat.
Sure.
One of the questions is, so the third piece is the three-dimensional class that you were talking about, are those elements. Are those for beginners or more experienced felters? Can anyone do it, basically?
Oh, so we talking right now about the pictures that we showed of the fruit?
No, I think it was in addition to, so you had the three-dimensional felting that you showed. So can anyone participate?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So when we get to the point where we move, like the first class we do will be these two-dimensional fruits. And again, I just showed you examples of how I did it. You can do it as simply or as in a complex manner as you want. And this is the beauty of felting, is that if you're doing also the sculptural thing, absolutely for beginners as well. That I've had almost everybody that comes into a class I've ever done. Most people have never done felting before. They've never picked up a needle. So the beautiful thing, like I said before, is it's so accessible, because when you're using a sewing machine, it's a little daunting. It's like, I'm a little afraid of my sewing machine still. I use it with some of my pieces, but I'm kind of afraid of it because I'm not a sewer. But with this, it's beautiful. You can start poking right away. You might jab your finger a little bit of bead of blood that comes up, but you're going to learn really quickly. And it's so forgiving. You can pull wool out, you can add wool. That's why I absolutely love felting, is it's one of those things that offers some immediate gratification, and there's so much room to play and to grow.
Thank you, Carolyn. And Alice asked, does llama fiber felt well?
You know what? I'm going to be truthful and say that I have not personally felted with any of these other fibers like llama or alpaca or yak or camel or goat, or rabbit. But I do know that they are feltable and that people have felted with them. I just haven't done a lot of experimentation with them. I think we have another question.
We do. So Anne asked, what's the difference using single felting needles or the pronged needles?
So with the single needle, it's more about just covering area, covering territory. So say you were working on something bigger and you were trying to get it packed down. If you have a holder where you stick in like 4 needles or 7 needles, you can cover more territory. It's doing more work for you. Whereas with a single needle, it'll take longer because you're having to, if it's 3-dimensional, you're having to turn, keep turning this around and around and around and poke. And so that's all it is getting more work done more quickly. Yeah. Are there any other questions on the board?
I have a question. So explain exactly what happens in the process of needle felting. Like because I know nothing. So as you're step by step, step 1, we have this, step 2, we have this, the needle does exactly what,
Okay. So I'm going to walk over to my table over here and see if once again, my phone will not fall out. And I'm going to show you, I'm going to point it down and I'm going to show you. So here is a canvas right here. Okay. I hope that is visible. And there's the needle. So when I'm going to do this one-handedly. I take a little piece of wool. A second here, folks. I got to get better equipped here, don't I? And so say I want to start making like a circle. Well, I could sort of shape the wool into sort of like a circle, lay it down on my canvas. Remember what the needle is doing. It's breaking open the scales and it's encouraging those fibers to all connect together. So in a sense, your needle is not only like a sculpting tool, but it's also like gluing in a sense, because wherever you poke, it's going to now connect and latch on and entangle. So I am just sort of poking along here. And you could see how it's going right into that canvas behind, which is that piece of pre-felt I referred to. And I can go really fast if I want to, or slow. And I use the tip of my needle often to, move the wool a little bit into the position I want it. And can you see that it is completely poking into that canvas. And you can hear that beautiful sound, which I love so much. There. And then I could add other colors. I can shade, I can define, I can use that needle around an edge to really cut into it like I'm edging a garden to make it really pop. And the thing is, when we stick that needle into the pad, though, we want to make sure we're not bending the needle back and forth too much because that'll break the needle. But when the needle is out of the piece, you can certainly gently push the wool along to create, you know, like shapes or lines, that kind of thing. So there you go. That's kind of what's happening. And it's, as soon as you start poking, it feels like magic. Like you can't believe it's happening, but it's so quick. It's so satisfying.
That's fantastic. I'm so excited now to do this. That's just amazing.
Oh, you're going to love it. But of course, I'm a little biased.
There was a question in the chat. Sheila wanted to know, can you please talk about using 100% wool yarn as a material?
Are you talking about yarn, like spun wool, like that is used for knitting? Is that the question?
Where is Sheila? Maybe we can unmute Sheila so she can answer the
Sure,
question.
let's let Sheila ask.
Hi.
There she is.
Hi.
Hi. Yeah, so not as 100% using it in conjunction, but I'm talking more like, could you use it in conjunction with your merino wool or your carded wool? Can you use that as a substitute?
If it's yarn,
Why, yeah, why say you have 100% wool yarn and you need a color and like, oh, could I just add this in here? And will it?
Yeah, I've never needle felted 100% wool yarn. I don't know how well it would manipulate under the needle because, like I said, some fibers do really well under the needle. Some wool fibers and some are a little more frustrating. But certainly when you're wet felting and you're creating a design in front of you, you can lay down all kinds of fibers on your piece. And a lot of people will take yarn and use it to create wonderful accents and designs on top. But I've never actually taken the needle and said, okay, now I'm going to take this little ball of yarn and try to felt it all together. Ultimately, it probably would. It's 100% wool. It's just sometimes things happen a whole lot faster when you use a certain kind of wool. So to be honest, I've never tested that theory out.
Thank you.
Do we have another? I think another question came in.
We do. It is from Alice, and she's asked, do you need a different needle to make fine lines or just the 40 gauge?
The 40 gauge is really good for fine detail. I basically use it most of the time when I'm finishing, say, a little needle felting project where I want to get more into the fine detail, or in my wet felting pieces after they've dried. I like that 40 because it's quite delicate and can deal with some fussy features. Some of the other ones might leave a little more like the look of holes as you've poked. But the thing is, the nice thing about wool is it bounces back, right? So you can rub your finger over it and it sort of fills in those holes quite nicely. But the 40 is pretty much as fine as I'm aware it gets. Any other questions about it?
I have a question again. So do you always just start off with the wool on your canvas, or do you draw something first on the canvas?
That's an excellent question. You know, I teach this class, I call it Learn to Draw with Wool, and everybody is different. Some people will, in a very detailed manner, draw something right on that backing. And I've seen that because that's the way their brain works. They like to see everything. Other people may just have little markers. Like sometimes I say to people, like, take your wool and you could generally draw, poke with the wool an outline of, say, where you want your bird to go or where you want, and some people just start at the bottom and move their way up. It really depends on the person and how comfortable they are with the whole process. So, but that is a really good question. And I have had several people, yes, indeed, draw the shapes on their canvas before they start poking, because it's ultimately all going to get covered up, right? which is nice.
Carolyn, we've got a question from Miss Roseman. I'm going to pin her. If you can unmute yourself, that would be great.
Cool.
Okay.
There we go.
My question is, you keep referring to wet felting and needle felting. What is the difference between the two?
So wet felting is a process where we take a piece, I usually take a piece of pre-felt, again, looser than the one I showed you for needle felting. It's more loosely felted. You don't even need that. You could start from the table up. And I lay down what are called wool tops, different kind of wool. Still, I use merino, but this wool, these are called wool tops. And basically the premise is that these are different than what I showed you. The fibers are longer and they're combed in one direction. So when I hold this up, these fibers are combed in one direction and they're parallel to one another. And so what's beautiful about this is there's a lot more sort of precision and control in terms of the effects you want to have in terms of shading and swooshy lines. It's like more of a painterly effect. But anyways, there's a process by which you lay down this wool. You take off little fans of wool. I'm going to try and spread, not that this is a wet felting class right here, but I'll just show you. I take off a fan of wool and I lay it down on the canvas. And then I do that right across the canvas, overlapping those little fans. And then I go in the other direction. And then I do a third layer in the other direction, perpendicular, laying down those fans until the whole thing is covered. And then when you built up these, what are called base layers, then you can create a design using all kinds of colors and fibers. And then when we wet felt, what we're doing is we're not using the needle at this point. We take like a net, we put it over top the design. We put some water on it. We put some little soap driplets and we start rubbing it and rubbing it. There's many ways to felt through the wet felting process. You could use your hands or there are tools. You can roll it up. And it's the water and the soap and the agitation that is felting everything together. You can still needle felt on your piece after it's done. The needle very much plays into this whole process with me afterwards. But that's basically a difference. One is dry, one is wet, but they all require that agitation. They do require that somehow for those scales to open and somehow for those scales to connect. So that's very quickly the difference between the two. Yeah, good question.
Immensely helpful. Anybody else have any questions?
I thought I saw another question roll in, but maybe it was already asked.
Yeah, I think so. Let me take a peek here.
Oh,
Here we go.
I see that question. Can you talk about the class and the kits? Sure can. I'm really excited about that. So what's going to happen is you ladies can expect in this next certain bit of time, I'm not sure if it might be 2 weeks, I'm not sure, but you can expect to see these kits online. And what will be in a kit will be a foam pad, will be 3 needles, will be a few pieces of the felt canvas I mentioned, and there will be some wool, and there will be just general guidelines and a picture of the fruits that you see here, and general guidelines on how to needle felt, okay, so that you're all set up, so that when we have the class and you register for the class, you are all set with your kit at home, and we can work on it together. Now, again, you might all have a different fruit that you want to do. You may get a kit that has lemon and a peach in it. You may decide to do the lemon. Some of you may have the kit that has the pear and the apple in it. You may decide to do the apple. So, but that doesn't matter because the ideas behind it are all the same. And the wonderful thing is that you may take it in a totally different direction. You have your own creative style, believe it or not. You may not think you have a creative voice, but you do have a creative voice, and it'll start to come out as you get comfortable with that needle, and you have all this wool to choose from, all these lovely little colors, and you can then take it in any direction. But that's what we'll do during the class. We'll talk about how to needle felt, and then we'll sort of start working on some premises together.
Carolyn, there was a question related to the foam pad and how long that lasts. Is there a rule?
Well, it depends on the kind of foam pad. The ones you're going to get in the kit depends if you're like doing frequent felting, then you'll notice that they get sort of soft in the middle and they start to, get saggy and that kind of thing. So those won't last. I can't give you a definitive amount of time, but if you're poking around a lot on that pad, you'll notice you'll go through it. Oh, I don't know. It could, a few months, but if you're felting around the clock, it could be like, a few weeks. And then I use something that's higher density foam that lasts me a longer period of time. And so, they do need to be replaced. Again, I can't really honestly tell you how long it'll last.
So I think as it relates to the class, there have been the kit, as you mentioned, comes with 3 needles, the foam pad, the felt, the yarn already there, the instructions. Our plan is to retail these for under $25. So you would get the kit and you would get that in advance of the class and then participate in this class. There was a question related to, will there be multiple classes? And the answer is maybe. And of course, yes. So what we'll do is we are going to limit the first class to 25 participants because obviously we want to make sure that everyone is able to interact with Carolyn. And as the demand grows, and we believe that it will, we'll add in subsequent classes. So we're going to start with the 2-dimensional felting and then evolve into the 3-dimensional, which we're really excited about. But starting with the foundation of what Carolyn has really shown today will be great for all of us. And of course, Carolyn, as a trusted member of our community as well, will be available and we can give you access to her outside of that should you have questions. But I think we're all very excited about this medium and the fact that we're putting a kit together. I think you'll all enjoy it. And the great part about these kits is that you're going to have extra wool, we're going to add in an extra piece of felt so that if you want to do things above and beyond that, you're able to.
I think you're going to have a lot of fun. I really hope you, give it a whirl because I don't know, it's just, you can really zen out when you do this and hours go by and you're so surprised how quickly you can do this.
We do too, Patricia. Patricia just said she wants to do 3D animals, and we do as well. There's a method to our madness because by the time we get to the holiday season, perhaps we'll all be felting little ornaments, which would be so cool to give to people. So
absolutely.
Yeah,
there's lots of things you ladies can do. And I used to create needle felting kits, and I had kits that were like the little gnomes, gingerbread man. I had a deer with a cardinal on its nose and called it Hello Dear. And I had mice, like 3 mice stacked up. So I had sort of a beginner level kit and then got into a little more medium and then a little more complex. But anything, I mean, we could create any kind of kits and like Nicole said, as the community grows and people learn about this, we can go any which way.
And yes, Melanie, you will get an email. So typically the way these sessions work is we will send an email with a recording to this session. Now, the speaker view is the one that is shown in the recording. We want to be sensitive of privacy. So you can refer back to the lessons that Carolyn or her passion and what she shared here. And you'll get an email once the kits are available. And so the goal would be to give those on this call first priority to attend the session. So you will know that, and Carolyn and I have been working in collaboration to make sure that these kits, we're putting them together in the best way. And what I personally love about what we're doing is not only do you all get to interact with Carolyn and clearly see her passion for this and she's so amazing, but that we also know where the wool is coming from. We know we have full transparency. So we know where all the manufacturers are putting this together. We know Natalie and her husband who are helping us procure these materials. And we'll share that with you in about a week or so. So you'll definitely have access to everything you'll need in advance. And so the idea is, I think we aligned, Carolyn, it's May 6th, I believe, is when we'll be doing this session. And the reason for the time lapse delay between now and then is we want to procure the kits, then we want to be able to give you all enough time to purchase the kits and get them in time for the class. So it's all going to be very, very fun. And we already
Yeah.
have an idea of the kits for the fruits that Carolyn already has some great ideas for the 3-dimensional coming up, which we're so excited about.
I think you'll all love it. And, you know, what, depending on what your taste is, you know, if you're a person who's enjoy doing other kinds of crafting or art, I mean, you can, what I love about it is you can fulfill what you enjoy doing. You know, it doesn't have to be some prescribed thing that other people do. It's like just learning a skill, like anything, you learn a skill and then you take it in the direction you want to take it, which is beautiful. Do we have another question there, Nicole?
I don't see
Sorry.
anything.
Okay, I thought I saw one roll in. Oh, okay, cool.
It's just, it sounds terrific. I'm so excited. I can see Nicole too. I think this is the first kind of crafting workshop session we've had where I could see Nicole lighting up because she wants to do it. This is good.
I got to show you guys before we end, I got to show you, this one was another kit I did a little more advanced, but it was a kitchen witch. I don't know if any of you are familiar with a kitchen witch. It's a gift. Basically, I think the lore has it that it was Norwegian or German tradition and that you give a kitchen witch to somebody as a gift. And she was to protect your kitchen from any ill will directed toward your home, to protect it from any ill will directed towards it, and make a very productive kitchen. So I call her Spoon Hilda. And so she's on a spoon. And then there's her little face. Little witchy poo there. So there's so many, there's her little hat. And I mean, I cut out a little apron. I told you I don't sew really, but there's a little apron plus a little spoon on her belt. So there's so many, I'm telling you, it's addictive. You could, you know, whether you go 2-dimensional or 3-dimensional, you could get completely addicted.
Oh my gosh, I'm in love with the kitchen witch with Spoon Hilda. She's adorable. That's like, for me, that has now become like a hashtag goal. That's where I want to get to.
Okay, so I'll make a Spoon Hilda and I'll model it after you, Melissa.
Oh goodness. Okay.
I'll put your little headband on it. No, she'll be cute. Your little April Cornell headband.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Linda again, if I can say something. All this is so wonderful. I can't wait. I haven't figured out how to text in or write in a message or a question. I'll learn that. But yes, this is just absolutely beautiful. That witch, I'm into witches and it's great. Thank you so much.
Aw, that's awesome.
We do have a question too. What do you use under the 3D pieces? Is it the same foam as well?
Yeah. Now with the 3D pieces, usually there's not, unless you're working on really finicky features like a hat or a belt, oftentimes the piece becomes perched on the foam pad. So a lot of your poking is not even into the foam pad, but you do need something underneath it, always a foam pad. And I do need to add that it doesn't always have to be these man-made materials. There are pads out there that you can buy that are almost like barley in like a cloth bag. So I don't know, I can't remember where you can source those, but if you were to look up organic, foam, like organic pads for felting, I'm sure you'd find them. So it's not just these foam pads that are used. I should add that in. There are some more
Carolyn,
sustainable options.
Carolyn, there's a question about, is the wool easily accessible? So once they get going, how do they purchase?
Yeah, and it depends on where you live, ladies. I ship mine in from Montreal, but there are a few stores near me where I could sort of, drive around and pick bits and pieces up, but I wanted to have a place where I could get everything from that one supplier. But there are, like in the States, one of the biggest suppliers is Living Felt, and she's in Texas, Living Felt. And so you'd be able to get a lot of stuff there, but I know there's other ones too. Like if you look it up on Etsy or look up near you, start with near you, Google, felting supplies, in your city, and just see, because you might be surprised. There might be something closer to you, which is always nice to support local, but there are a couple of the bigger companies that will offer everything you need.
Patricia has a follow-up to her question about the 3D felting or the 3D foam. It wasn't under the 3D felting. She wants to know, do you put it inside the form or do you just build the wool?
Oh, no. It's the felting pad is just on the table. No, you're taking felt and you're making it solid unless you don't want it solid. Like for instance, that witch I showed you, her skirt there is, I just draped it and it's like I'm showing you under a turkey. It's hollow. I just kind of had drapey wool kind of around, but her head, I took a piece of a ball of wool and it probably started off like this big, right? I mean, it shrinks as you felt, everything shrinks. And the more you felt, the more compact it gets. So you just keep compacting and compacting. There is something called core wool. So when you are making shapes and you don't want to go through the most expensive colors of wool and the pretty wools you have, it's called core wool. It's more inexpensive. It's like a natural white color, off white. And it's a great way to do sort of those forms underneath, because it's not like you're using your very best wool in terms of the colors and whatnot. That's a little more expensive. So you can pack the inside with this form and then just, poke around the outside with another color and your more expensive wool. That's a great question. Some people put armatures inside their pieces. I've never gone this direction because I went more into the direction of two-dimensional art. But some people, when they're, look it up online, look up like needle felted like characters, you will be blown away. Sometimes people make an armature out of like metal, like little metal or pipe cleaners. And then they like start building up the wool around the armature so that the dolls, like if they're dolls, they can actually bend. And it's phenomenal. Portraiture like you've never seen. A cat that looks exactly like a cat. Like, I mean, unbelievably exactly like a cat. The talent out there in needle felting goes beyond, for sure.
This is all so incredibly exciting. We have about 7 minutes-ish left. If anybody has any pressing or burning questions. Melanie says, oh, the information's been wonderful. Excited about this class. Alice wants to know if we already have some supplies, could we take the class without buying a kit?
That's up to Nicole, but if you've
Of
got the
course.
supplies, I
Of
mean, if you
course.
want to,
Of
I mean,
course.
Nicole?
Absolutely.
Yeah, because you may have some of the stuff sitting around and that's fine. The class is for the instruction and you want to be able to sort of hopefully follow along and maybe make a fruit. It would be nice if you're somewhat connected to what the rest of us were doing, but yeah, by all means.
Great. Anybody have anything else before we go and start dreaming of wool? Oh, this feels like a silly question, but since we're working with 100% wool, what about moths over time? That's not a silly question, by the way. There are no silly questions, but that's a good question, actually.
It's not silly at all. I'll show you. I bought these little cedar. I got these through Amazon, I believe. I got these little cedar bricks to put in my cubbies next to my wool because I'm a little worried about over time. Yeah, the moths getting into it. At home, I noticed I was in this one carpet in my house, I was getting little tiny carpet moths. And when I transported some wool over here to the studio, I noticed I hadn't dug to the bottom of one of my baskets in a while. And yeah, the moths had gotten to it. So I was like, oh, and so I went and bought some of the cedar blocks and I cleaned out and I totally disinfected the basket and all that. So it does happen. Storage, storage is an important thing. And letting the wool breathe is nice too. Wool has some natural moisture in it. And so giving it space to breathe is good. But protecting against the moths, yeah, for sure.
Great. All right. Anybody else? Now's your chance. Oh, there's just a thank you.
It's lovely to see you all here today. And I hope you're willing to give it a shot and yeah, oh, you're so welcome and get in there and jump in and start poking and trust me, do not be afraid of it. You can do this. You can totally do this.
I love that. Patricia says, so we don't want to store the wool in sealed containers?
No, you can. I mean, I just think that instead of like really tight plastic bags all the time or something, like out, like the cubbies are nice, and you know, you're going to be opening and shutting drawers, and usually some of these containers, little air gets in. I mean, I'm not saying it has to be that particular. Some people put it in pillowcases, like cloth, cotton pillowcases. Just a little bit of aeration, so that it doesn't, like I had some wool that was trapped in some pretty tight packages, and I noticed when I brought the wool out, it was starting to almost like smell a little funky. It was fine. It aired out and everything. So, I mean, a little breathability is nice. Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you so much. I'm so excited as well. I am going to figure out how to type my questions and comments in. Thanks again. Loved it.
Oh, wonderful. We must have people from coast to coast here. I'm curious about where some people are from.
That's a good question. How about typing in the chat, if you can get to the chat, where you're joining us from today? Albany, New York.
Maryland, West Virginia, Connecticut, North Carolina, California, West Virginia, Alberta, yeah, Alberta, Canada. Woo. Awesome.
Illinois.
New Jersey, Indiana, everywhere. This is awesome. Alaska.
Alaska.
Oh,
Minnesota, Alaska. This is so great. And of course, I'm in the Catskills. Bedford Hills, New York. Awesome. Awesome. Love that. And Nicole is in Southern California.
yeah.
My home.
Beautiful. So we have folks from all over the place, which is so, yeah, I love it. I just love it. So let us get together again and do some felting. I hope I will see everybody on May 6th.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you so much, Carolyn. This was so fun and so informative. And the great thing about it is now this whole process doesn't seem, at least to me, intimidating at all. I'm excited. I wish we could do it now. So I'm really excited, and I can tell by everyone's response, they're really excited too. So this is going to be a lot of fun.
Yay.
And
I
we
hope
get
everybody has a lovely weekend, and this was a blast. I appreciate meeting you all.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was so great to see everybody today. You all stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy, stay curious, and I send you all tons of love, and we will see you next time, and we'll definitely, hopefully see you all on May 6th for our first official felting class. Take care, everybody. And Carolyn, thanks again. This is really, really great. I'm so excited.
Me too. Totally. Yoo-hoo.
Woohoo! All right, everybody. We'll see you soon.
Bye, ladies.